Welcome to a new session. And in this session, we are going to explore how to set up an auto-scaling environment within the AWS platform. All right. So I guess you would have already gone through the relevant documentation within the learning management system. All right. And I guess you would have an idea about all the components that is required to be used for building the auto scaling environment, right? So what I'm going to do right now is since there are many components required, so there's going to be an EC2 instance, there is going to be the OS image, then there's going to be the security group, then there's going to be the launch templates, then there's going to be the target groups, then there's going to be the load balancer, then there is also going to be the of course, and the auto scaling feature. So all of them are going to be working together. So then there is also going to be the cloud watch, then there is going to be the health metrics, then there is also going to be the stress test we're going to be doing. So this whole auto scaling module is quite an extensive module. So please do take your time to understand all the components and spend a considerable amount of time in learning this particular topic, because it's going to be an entirely automated system. We are not going to be even going and deploying or launching any template manually. It's going to be completely automated end to end. But let's see how to get this implemented. All right. So the first step here is I want to go ahead and create a launch template. All right. So the first step is towards the launch template. Click on create launch template. And you'll see a summary of the selections that we make around here. All right, so the launch template, I call it as the launch template 1. And the template version, I leave it as 1. If you want to change this, according to the description that you want, you can put it in here. But remember, this becomes as your version 1, version 2, version 3, and so on. So this can be, used later. For example, you already have a version 1 and you want to call that version and you want to make minor changes to that. And so that template can be used. So that can be called from the source template here, but I'm not going to use any source templates. I'm going to do the entire system manually. But at the end of the manual setup, it's going to be getting completely automated. So the template version description is 1. I'll leave it as it is there. I've put in 1 there. Then let's select on the OS image here. Hit on click quick start, and you should see a list of all the available OS images here. I'm going to be selecting the Amazon Linux one, and you can see that we have the it's the first one that's showing here. We can see almost all the AMI versions which is related to the Linux. However, I'm going to choose the Amazon Linux 2 AMI here. All right, and the architecture is 64-bit, and yes. So let me move on now. Instance type is very important. So I'm going to be using the T2 Micro, which is the free tier eligible one. All right. So that's the key pair for login. Since I'm going to be using Instance Connect to log into connect to the machines, I'm not going to create any key pair at the moment. However, if your organization requires you to have a key pair created for it, you can do it at this stage. Then comes the network settings. So I'm not going to include any subnet here, but I'm going to create a new security group for this particular launch template, and I'll call this as web server security group, and I'll copy paste that into the description also. And the VPC, you can leave it as the default, but you need to set the security group rules. All right, so that's very important here. So what are the rules that we need? We need SSH for logging onto the machine, and you want the source type to come in from anywhere. Of course, yes, this warning symbol is going to be there. Then the second, I want to add the HTTP because we are going to be using the web servers, right? So let's go ahead and put it there. And the description, you can fill it as it is. So anywhere, I'll just leave it here. And the third one, I'll add the HTTPS also. HTTPS, yes. And I want the source type from anywhere. All right. So SSH from anywhere, HTTP from anywhere, and security group from anywhere. You can go ahead and strengthen your security rules however you want. Let's say if you want your if you have a Bastion server and you want your server to be accessible from only within that particular Bastion server, you can set it accordingly here. All right. Then the storage part, I'll leave it at 8 GB of storage, and I'll use GP2 only. Okay, I'm not going to add any additional volume here. As for the resource tags, I'm not going to do anything here. Advanced details, yes. So this is pretty much configure instance details is what all the options we get here. Okay, the shutdown behavior, hibernate behavior, termination protection, all those options. What is more important for us is the bootstrapping. All right, so just to make sure that we are bootstrapping correctly. So you should be already having the bootstrapping code with you, right, from the previous sessions. So let me just review this. Bin bash update -y install -y httpd system ctl start httpd enable httpd, and yes, all seems to be good for me. All right. Okay, so I have a summary here. Linux 2 kernel, T2 micro, new security group, and one volume of 8 GB per instance. So remember, this is all for the instance is what we are getting prepped up. Okay, so the launch template has been successfully created. All right, so now the next step is we have to go ahead and create the auto scaling group. Okay, so let me go ahead and open the auto scaling group now. Okay, so I don't have any auto scaling group at the moment, so I'm going to create it from the scratch. So the first step is to create auto scaling group. Click on auto scaling group, and I'll call this as ASG1. And see, we have the launch template option here. All right, so if you don't have a template already, you can go ahead and switch to launch configuration from here. But the right method will be to have the launch template prepped up already before you start with this process. So let's go ahead and choose the launch template which we have created already. All right, so T2 micro, everything looks good. Let me click on next. All right, next comes the VPC, okay, the network information. So I'm going to use the default VPC. However, if you want to go and take a little more customization, go ahead and create a custom VPC and try to use that also. But make sure all the 6 components of the VPC are set up correctly. All right. Then comes the availability zones and subnets. You need to understand that you have to select each of them one by one here. Okay, so please be careful, mindful about this. All right, so if you're just clicking on one, it will not just show up. You have to select all of them manually one by one. Then comes the instance type. Looks good. Then the load balancer, which is the critical part of it. So either I can attach to an existing load balancer, or I can create a new load balancer. And for this demonstration, I'm going to be creating a new load balancer from within the auto scaling group. All right. And whether you want the application load balancer or a network load balancer, I'll keep it with the application load balancer, and the name is automatically generated for us. However, we will call this as ASG ALB1. Okay, application load balancer 1. The load balancer scheme needs to be internet facing because we are going to be having connections coming from outside world. Okay, all right. So the availability zones and subnets are already configured. Listeners and routing. So here we have the option to create a target group. If you haven't created a target group already, or if you have a target group already, that should be reflecting within your you should be actually doing a completely different set of process. You would have been starting to use the existing load balancer, but we are keeping everything new here. So I'll create a new target group, and I'll call that target group as TG1, ASG1, ALB1, TG1. Okay, so I can relate it very clearly that auto scaling group 1 attached to application load balancer 1, which is attached to TG1. So it is easy for me to remember that. And as for the health checks, make sure you also do the ELB level health checks, because it is very critical that the health check between the load balancers and the instances are intact. And as for the health check grace period, I will reduce this to 60 seconds just to cut on the time. Next, click on next. And as for the group size, you have the desired capacity, minimum capacity, and the maximum capacity. So what is this desired capacity, minimum capacity, and maximum capacity? The desired capacity is how many instances I want to have up and running at any given point in time, right? Whereas the minimum capacity is in case of any errors in your configuration, in case of any errors within your environment, or if any failures occur within your environment, whatever the situation may be, how many instances you want to be running minimum. Okay, so I'll leave it as 1, but my desired capacity can be 1. All right, so, or if you want to increase it to 2, you can increase it to 2. But remember, the desired capacity will be the actual configuration that will be running during the normal operation. In the event that there is some errors within your configuration or the errors within your application which is not allowing the configuration to be intact, you will have how many instances you want to have running minimum. That is what is the minimum capacity. And the maximum capacity is in the event of auto scaling is kicking in. All right, how many maximum number of instances you want to allow to start. So that is what is the maximum capacity. So I leave the desired capacity at 1, maximum capacity at 1, and the desired capacity at 1, minimum capacity at 1, and the maximum capacity I'll make it as 2. We will later edit this and see what is happening. Next, coming to the scaling policies, we have what is called as the target scaling policy. So the target scaling policy enables us to set the parameter for the auto scaling to start. Okay, so I can set any name here. I'll keep it as target scaling tracking policy as it is. And there are many metric types here. You have the CPU utilization, average network. The most important one is the number of request count per target. All right, so this is one of the key questions that occurs in almost all AWS exams when the question is going to be related to the auto scaling. All right, so they always tend to ask question about this load balancer request count per target. So remember that, please. However, for this demonstration, I'll leave it at CPU utilization, and the target value I'll set it at 30. So what I mean here is, in the event of the total CPU utilization is going to be spiking above 30%, then go ahead and start auto scaling. That's what I'm telling the system to do. And the last one is instance scale in production. I'm not going to enable this at the moment. I'll go ahead and click on next. Okay, so now here you have an option to add an SNS notification. So if I'm going to add a notification, I can create a topic, and what I can do is I can say, okay, if there is a launch happening, or if there is a termination happening, or if there's a fail to launch, then send a mail to this address. So you see, I have already tested something like infratute@gmail.com earlier, but I'm not going to do for this one. Okay, so I'll just remove that and I'll skip this part. As for the tags, so I'll skip this also. All right, so we have sent up the launch template was set up successfully. Now the instance launch options are also set up. The load balancer, health checks, scaling policy is set, and yes, let me create remember, after I create the scaling policy, we are going to see the instances will be starting to spin up. So let's watch that now. So create auto scaling group. All right, so if my configuration is all right, it's going to tell me ASG1, 1 scaling policy, 1 load balancer, 1 target group, 1 listener created successfully, 1 new target group has been attached to the ASG. All right, okay, let me open it here and let us close this. Okay, let's see what's happening now. Let me close the launch template. Let me go back to the dashboard and let's see what's happening. Let me open the instances tab here. Okay, the instance, there should be 1 instance which is already starting. Okay, that's already come up now. It is just initializing. Okay, yeah, that just started. So you remember the 1 desired capacity, it has just started right now. Okay, so this is the way we are setting up the auto scaling group. Now let's go ahead and test this. All right, so to do that, let us first open up some more tabs here. So I have the auto scaling group information, I have the instances information. Then let me go ahead and open the load balancers. Let me open the target groups. Yeah, and I also need what is the CloudWatch. Okay, so let me open the CloudWatch also. So remember, whenever you are setting up a auto scaling group, okay, there is a set of metrics that is automatically started. Uh, Alarms. Let me go and click on alarms. Yeah, you see, there is like two alarms just started with the um, auto scaling group. So these are the alarms which are actually going to be triggering the event for us. Okay, all right. So let me come back here. Let me look for only the running instances. So I have one running instance come up. It's just initializing. So the load balancer is good. We have the DNS name for the load balancer. The target group is already there. And let's check. It's still initializing. Target registration is in progress. So we will have to wait for a bit there. All right. It's already healthy. Remember, your auto scaling group, it takes a while for it to learn to, adapt your environment. So in the first setup, and probably the first hour, it's going to be a bit sluggish. This is out of experience. The first 30 minutes or probably an hour, it may be a slightly sluggish. But after that, once your environment is getting stabilized, what happens is it's quite instantaneous. Okay. Okay. All right. So now let us go ahead and check on the instances back. So we have only one instance that is running, and let's try to access the load balancer, and let's see what's happening there. Just waiting for the response. Yes. So we have one instance up and running. So the server setup was correct and it is working fine for us. Okay. Now let's go and test the environment. So what I'm going to do for testing the environment is you first log on to the instance, connect to the instance using instance connect. Okay. All right. After connecting to the instance connect, I want you to go and open up, search for AWS EC2 stress test. Okay, and you can add GitHub also at the end. So the keywords are AWS EC2 stress test and add GitHub. All right. So the first one that comes up is called as a stress utility. So this is a utility for testing the for stressing your resources on the instance to actually break the system and bring the auto scaling up. All right. So now I want you to run the command here, which is the first one, Amazon Linux extras install epl-y. Let me come here. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm adding the epl repository. Then I'll also go and copy the next step, which is to install the stress test utility. All right, the first one is completed. Let me now install the stress test utility. It's saying the previous one is still caught up. Let's just wait for a bit. All right, that was quite fast and it worked. All right, let me become the root here. Okay, now while that is happening, let's just quickly look here. So it is currently showing insufficient data. Let me refresh this once again. It's showing insufficient data here. CPU utilization less than 27 for 15 data points within 15 minutes and greater than 30 for 3 data points within 3 minutes. And the actions are enabled. All right. Let's come back here, the auto scaling group activity. Let's check the activity. So here you can see that, remember, this is under the auto scaling group and you have the activity. All right. So when you come here, you have launching a new EC2 instance. So remember, we did not manually launch this instance. This instance was automatically launched by the auto scaling group. Okay. Coming back and visiting the target group, all looks good. The load balancer is good. The instance is set up. Okay, so we have only one instance running at this point in time. Okay, let me go and click on this instance ID and I'll click on monitoring. Okay, and the CPU utilization will be here. So no data is available. It is saying no data is available. Let's just give it a few seconds there. Slowly it will start coming up. Okay, so you remember we've already installed the stress test utility. Now let's go ahead and start the stress test -c, and I'll make it as 8. Okay, so what I'm trying to emulate is I'm trying to tell the machine, like, there is like 8 CPUs, and I want to load the 8 CPUs. So, but remember, we have only one vCPU here, so there's going to be heavy load on the machine. And let's monitor the spike here. It is going to take a while for the spikes to be visible. Okay, so I'm going to pause this video, and I'll come back to you the video once I can see the spike here. Alright, so now we see that the CPU utilization on the instance is about 90%. Alright, okay, so it has come about 90% now, and let's see what's happening here. Let me go to the auto scaling group, and the new instance is yet to kick in. We'll just wait for the instance to start now. And you see that there is an in alarm for alarm high. Okay, so we have to give it a bit there. Let's check out on the instance details, instances, and we see that the second instance is already up. All right, so let's come back here, and we are yet to see the activity. It should be showing in a while that it's warming up. Let's check out the load balancer. All right, so we can see 2 instances are actually responding right now. So we had only one instance in the initial stage. So now the auto scaling has kicked in, and we have the second instance also up and running. Okay, let's just wait for this activity history to be updated, and we will then move ahead and increase the maximum number of instances and see what's happening. All right, so let's just give it a few more seconds there. Let me pause the video a bit there for you. Well, we can see that the alarm high has triggered launching a new instance. We can see that activity here. We already see the instance also, it's up and running. The second instance is up. All right, good. So now let's go ahead and play a little bit with the auto scaling group. So we know that the auto scaling group, the desired capacity is 1, the minimum capacity is 1, and the maximum capacity is 3. Let's go ahead and edit this, and you see the desired capacity has automatically increased to 2. All right, let me leave it at 2, and I'll increase the maximum capacity to 4. Okay, and let me update this. Okay, all right, so coming back to the instances, we have only 2 instances here. That's good. Now we have the stress test already running on one machine. Now let me go and start the stress test on the next machine also. So this is the latest machine that was started. Let me connect to this machine now, and let me repeat the process. Okay, let me install the EPEL repository, and let me copy the stress utility also. All right, this was completed. Let me install the stress utility now. Okay, the previous one is still holding it. Let me just give it a few seconds there, and let me try once again. Okay, the previous process which we started is still not completed. Just give it a few more seconds. All right. Okay, so now the stress utility is installed successfully, and I'll start on the second one also. All right, so remember the overall aggregate CPU utilization should not increase more than if the overall aggregate CPU utilization is going to increase more than 30%, then we should have the next instances kick in. And 3 instances together, even if it is not sufficient enough, then it will go ahead and create the 4th one. Why? We have allowed the maximum capacity or the maximum number of instances to be there at 4. Okay, let's go ahead and watch this utilization. All right, you can see that it was pretty fast. So I told you the first stages will be a bit sluggish, but then later it is going to be very fast. All right, so in Ohio we have only 3 availability zones. So you see that the load is being spread evenly across 2A, 2B, 2C. All of the availability zones have 1 instance within them. All right, so yeah, let us come back to the target groups and see what's happening. So all the 4 are there. It's good. So let's check out on the CloudWatch. The alarms are working fine. Okay, so the TG is good. Let's come to the let's check out the auto scaling activity here. Right, we see a lot of activity now, and you see it's jumped straight from 2 to 4, you know. So that's the power of auto scaling. So you have to be very careful when you are, you know, setting up your auto scaling, because 2 parts to it. When you are practicing it, make sure, you know, to stop all your instances, to clear up your entire environment after completion of this practice, because many students do tend to, you know, forget the cleanup activity, and at the end, since it's going to be automatically creating instances at the background if you don't clean up properly. So that is the part 1. And the very same within your environment, in your production environment, also make sure that you're setting it up the right way as required for your environment. So let me go ahead and now test it. Let's see what's happening. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Excellent. So we have 4 instances up and running because of the auto scaling setup. All right. Let me pause the video here. Let us now reverse the process. Okay. So we know that it is working successfully. So let's now reverse the process one by one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kill the stress test on the instances which I started there. Okay, so let's check that I stress. Okay, killed successfully. Let me check here also. So there are a few running there. So let me kill them. Okay, they are still running. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, pick up the process ID from here, and I am trying to kill the processes saying operation not permitted. Let me switch to the root, then es-ef -i stress. All right, so let me now, okay, it should be clean now. Yes, so we have stopped the stress test, we have killed the stress test. All right, let's check on the first instance also. All right, both of them seem to have stopped. So we should see 2 instances getting terminated now. All right, we'll wait for a while because it's going to take time for the system to understand it, and it's going to be scaling down. Okay, so there is a time there's a cooling off time before it is going to shut down the instances which are not required. So I'm going to pause the video while that happens. All right. If you look at the CPU utilization metrics, we see that the stress test caused the spike. Then it was running for a while. Then we killed it, and now the CPU utilization has come down. Let's now wait for the instances to scale back in. All right, let's just give it a few more moments there. It will start scaling in now. All right, so we see that the scale in has started, and 2 of the instances have started training, and target deregistration is in progress. Let's check out here on the activity, and it has already started to scale in. Okay, yes, that was what we expected. And let's refresh this. Yeah, they already selected, but it's yet to start. It will just kick in a bit. Just give it a few more seconds there. Let me pause the video again, and let's wait until it starts. All right, we can see that it is successfully scaled down, and 2 instances are terminated, and we have only 2 instances running. So that is the entire process. So it is going to take a while, so please be patient about it. Thank you very much for watching this session, and I'll connect with you in a new session there.